Number 10. Knock knock. First of all, sound does not exist in space. There's only emptiness. This story is peculiar for precisely this reason. Yang Liwei, the first astronaut launched by the Chinese space program, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name, was purportedly on board his space shuttle in 2003 when he heard a knock. In his words, someone was knocking the body of the spaceship just as one would knock an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. It appears that he is not the only one who has gone through this. Between 2005 and 2008, additional Chinese astronauts also claimed to have heard the same noises. Number 9. Moonstalkers. Conspiracy theories flooded the internet after astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first person to set foot on the moon. For starters, it's said that his famous moonwalk was staged in a studio. One of the many conspiracies surrounding this event is still a mystery to this day. NASA reports that after Armstrong touched down on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, transmission was lost for around 2 minutes. And in reportedly a secret message to NASA, he said, "These babies are huge, sir. Enormous. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon watching us." Number 8. Failed instruments. Chris Hadfield's first trip required him and his fellow astronauts to steer a shuttle weighing £250,000 towards a target on the Russian Mir space station the size of a coffee cup saucer. Hadfield's responsibility was to alert the pilot of their speed and range while they were docking. This was crucial since the docking required a great deal of precision. In order to dock, they had a 2-minute window and had to move at a speed of 10 feet per second, plus or minus 3/100ths of a second. It would be disastrous if they didn't do it. Hadfield stated that the spring system would bounce you off Mir if you struck it just slightly too softly. If you hit Mir just a little too soft, then the spring mechanisms would bounce you off, Hadfield explained. If you hit Mir just a little too hard, then you would break Mir in half and end the life of 3 people on board. So you've got to hit it exactly right. If the crew on board the flight deck of the shuttle don't solve this problem in the next 30 seconds, then the whole flight is bust and done. Yeah, their instruments went out while docking. Number 7. UFO Conundrum. You've certainly seen a number of articles describing astronaut Scott Kelly's difficult journey as he prepared to stay on the International Space Station for a very long period. He later became the astronaut who logged the most time there, but his story is notable for more reasons than just that. Kelly has made comments that imply a close encounter with aliens. Although he hasn't explicitly said it, his quips looked less like jokes and more like something that all of humanity should think about. Similar like the time he said in an interview that aliens have it easier in space than we do. Number 6. Almost poisoned on a spacewalk. When he was making improvements to the ISS, Bob Kerbeam was a seasoned spacewalker. He didn't anticipate a cooling line to burst, spewing poisonous ammonia all over his suit though. Since a spaceship is a closed system, the only air you can use is the air you took with you when you launched. Therefore, an astronaut must be very certain that they are not returning to Earth carrying any hazardous material. Kerbeam needed to halt the leak first. He then had to devise a plan for returning to the space shuttle without contaminating his spacesuit with the dangerous ammonia. Kerbeam dealt with the leak without incident. Even though we were making decisions on the spot, he claimed we understood the hardware, the system, and how it works so well. Because of the training, even if you have to make things up as you go along or perform them on the spot, you can do it intelligently. For an additional 30 minutes, he baked himself in the sun, which is unquestionably one of the most bizarre and scary sunbathing techniques one can undertake. The pollution came as the following issue. With that one, some good old-fashioned science came in handy. He only needed to vaporize the ammonia off of his suit because it has a low boiling point. Number 5. Lights. Leroy Chiao, an American astronaut, and his crew witnessed a group of peculiar lights in outer space while Chiao served as commander of the ISS in 2005. Chiao characterized the pattern as resembling an upside-down V. After it flew by them, the crew and Chiao happened to come across the formation. Despite the fact that some of the information regarding these objects seen in space is available for anyone to interpret, conspiracy theorists may be overly quick to smell the BS here. These tidbits from cosmic history definitely make us wonder, what truly is out there, despite the fact that there isn't much in the way of hard proof just yet. Number 4, see you on the way up. While floating on the International Space Station can be enjoyable, the journey there and back can be challenging, to say the very least. According to Tripson, the Russian Soyuz spacecraft in particular has strong G-forces. According to NASA astronaut Tracy, I've heard it described as a train wreck followed by a car crash then falling off your bike. Prior to her independent flight home from the station, Caldwell Dyson recently said she claimed that after going on the vacation, the rumors were accurate. It certainly didn't disappoint, Caldwell Dyson told Space.com after she arrived. There were all the fringe bells, whistles, and sensations. Although certain things' magnitude were a little shocking, overall it was a thrilling ride. Number 3, baby food. Food in space still has room for improvement. Obviously, you've seen the pictures, despite the fact that it is no longer limited to Tang and freeze-dried ice cream. Fresh produce is hard to come by, for instance, and ground foods like bread are unworkable because they generate crumbs that in microgravity fly everywhere instead of resting on the floor and make cleanup a mess. Instead, astronauts prefer tortillas because they produce fewer crumbs. Additionally, astronauts often become tired with the same menu of reheatable meals that are rotated every 8 days. However, a robotic cargo ship that was supposed to provide supplies and fresh food to the station was delayed in the winter of 2004. As a result, the Expedition 10 crew, which involved Russian flight engineer Salazan Sharapov and NASA commander Leroy Chiao, had to restrict their meals. The two ultimately reduced their normal meal consumption by half in order to conserve resources, then made up for the missing calories by consuming an excessive amount of desserts and candies. At the time, Chiao stated it wasn't an unhealthy diet, but it wasn't an optimum one either. Number 2, bones. Astronauts must contend with major health effects from their stay in orbit in addition to their daily inconveniences. The impact on their bones is one of the most important ones. According to a new study, an astronaut's bone strength decreases by at least 14% during a 6-month stay in space. According to other studies, an astronaut's bone mineral density can drop by 0.4% to 1.8% per month while they are stationed there, increasing their risk of fractures and osteoporosis in later life. While there is no permanent solution for this issue, astronauts make a point of performing bone strengthening exercises while they are on the space station and engaging in rigorous rehabilitation once they return to Earth in an effort to prevent having the bones of a 90-year-old. Number 1, all alone. The sensation of loneliness astronauts can have after spending half a year away from the entire globe, especially their family and friends, is perhaps the worst element of living in space. While crewmates and frequent phone calls home might help astronauts deal with loneliness, they occasionally have to miss important events back on Earth. While he was residing on the space station in December 2007, NASA astronaut Daniel Tanny's mother was ended in an automobile accident. Tanny had to grieve while he was in orbit more than 200 miles away, for nearly 2 months until he returned to Earth. And in 2004, NASA astronaut Michael Fink was compelled to miss the birth of his second child when his wife, Tarali, gave birth while he was on a lengthy assignment on Expedition 9 of the space station. When he finally landed 4 months later, he was able to meet his daughter for the first time. Number 10, they don't control the weather. It may seem odd to begin this list with a rumor that is untrue, but because it has been going on for so long, many people take it as gospel. At the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, there is a sizable structure called the Vehicle Assembly Building, or the VAB. With a height of 526 feet, or 160 meters, it is the tallest single-story structure in the world. With more than 3.5 million square meters of interior space, it is also one of the largest buildings of any sort in terms of volume. This entire space is required for what takes place inside its walls. The parts of rockets, space shuttles, and other spectacular pieces of equipment are assembled here in preparation for their trip to the stars. Because of the VAB's enormous size, rumors that it had its own internal weather system started to spread, with some people thinking that clouds would gather at the top of the structure. Well, an interview from 2019 indicates that this is untrue. On especially humid days, fog has been known to roll into the VAB, but no reports of interior clouds have yet been made. Sorry to ruin the fun. Number 9, what they send to space. Don't even think for a second that you wouldn't launch anything into orbit if you had the chance. Who is to truly blame NASA for launching a variety of odd items into the atmosphere? Over the years, NASA astronauts have mentioned a number of artifacts with historical and cultural value. During the Apollo 11 mission, a piece of fabric from the original Wright brothers' flyer landed up on the moon, perhaps to make Orville and Wilbur feel bad that they only managed to lift off a few feet. To commemorate 30 years since the release of the first Star Wars movie, the original prop of Luke Skywalker's lightsaber was launched on a space shuttle in 2007. Actually, that artifact wasn't utilized until 1983's Return of the Jedi, so war medals, teddy bears, engagement rings, and other treasured artifacts have already traveled into space with the help of NASA. But there's one more thing we should concentrate on, a cargo tag that was first shipped from Jamestown over the Atlantic in 1611. That's so far in the past. Number 8. The Enterprise. The 1981 launch of the Space Shuttle program was intended to advance affordable, reusable spacecraft. Unfortunately, the program was terminated in 2011 because it did not fully succeed the way NASA had hoped. Over the course of the project, 5 fully functional shuttles were constructed. However, today we're focusing on the one that was made before the official launch. It was intended to refer to the day it would be unveiled as Constitution Day by calling this initial attempt the Constitution. However, one thing that NASA had not anticipated while naming the spacecraft was the influence of Trekkies. Many Star Trek enthusiasts filed letters to the White House requesting that the name of the ship be altered. The government ultimately gave in to their demands and renamed the ship the Space Shuttle Enterprise. The crew of the first Star Trek was present as the ship was launched on Constitution Day in 1976. Well, everyone save William Shatner, but George Takei was present, so that's probably why. Number 7. The alligator problem. Alligators on the runway had to be continually removed every time a space shuttle touched down, which may have been one of the factors contributing to the cancellation of the Space Shuttle program. No, I mean it. The scaly snappers are everywhere at the Kennedy Space Center. The center is situated on Maury Island, a little piece of land that isn't exactly an island, but who's keeping score? It is located off the east coast of Florida. The NASA building isn't the only item on the island, despite being its most well-known landmark. The Maury Island National Wildlife Refuge is home to more than 1,000 different plant and animal species. You name it, the refuge has it. Sea turtles, manatees, bobcats, bald eagles, etc. So I guess some of the alligators got out and causing a ruckus. Number 6. Missing moon rocks. The story of Thad Roberts and his aspirations to do something extremely intriguing with a bunch of stolen moon rocks is already well known to anyone who has read Ben Mesrich's book, Boink on the Moon. Not the real name, can't say it on YouTube. Roberts had aspirations of acquiring many degrees and becoming an astronaut as a high-flying NASA co-op. He also fantasized about stealing some of NASA's most valuable items. Roberts took 101 grams of moon rocks from NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, with assistance from a group of accomplices. They must have had an issue, I suppose. Furthermore, Roberts stole several dinosaur bones from his institution as if this wasn't awful enough. According to reports, he also spread the pebbles out on his bed before being intimate with his partner on top of them. So, Boink on the Moon as a whole. When trying to sell the rocks, the young man and his fellow thieves were caught in an FBI sting operation and received jail terms. Number 5. They didn't invent what you think. The hook and loop fastener, also known as Velcro, and polytetrafluoroethylene, thankfully most generally known as Teflon, are two of the things NASA invented that are maybe the most frequently mentioned. However, neither of them actually came about as a result of any involvement by NASA. George de Mestral, a Swiss inventor who founded the Velcro firm in the 1950s, created the fastening. The invention made it easier for astronauts to put on and take off their bulky spacesuits, and NASA was one of the first important organizations to employ it. As for Teflon, it was created in the 1930s, decades before NASA even existed. The agency frequently employs it because it serves as an extremely effective heat shield. These two concepts were not created by NASA, however, it doesn't make them completely useless. The chemicals utilized in contemporary infant formula were discovered as a result of research into alternative methods of oxygen production. Additionally, a 1990s employee created a sensor that helped modern camera phones get their start. Number 4. The pen problem. Human men are complex creatures. I know, I am one. They seem absolutely incapable of tossing their socks into the washing basket, have extremely limited knowledge in some settings, and frequently have poor personal hygiene. But it doesn't mean we won't give it another shot later. They are also extremely delicate when it comes to their manhoods. Men can provide answers that are up to 4 times larger than their true size when asked how much they are packing down there. Normally, this wouldn't be a big issue, but precise measurements are crucial in the field of space travel. NASA astronauts with a pen have custom coverings created for them prior to any space journey. The onboard urination system includes custom sheaths that must precisely fit the affected member in order to function. Initially, NASA offered the spacemen 3 sizes to choose from: small, medium, and large. This, however, had to be abandoned since an excessive number of individuals chose the large ones, even though they were considerably too enormous. It's rumored that they circumvented this by changing the names of the sizes from small, medium to large into large, huge, and gigantic. Number 3, the floating matter. It's time for some more dreck and one of the most notorious radio broadcasts in history. The Apollo 10 mission, which was the second manned orbit of the moon, was viewed as a dress rehearsal for the moon landings. After a successful mission, the crew was preparing to return to Earth when Commander Thomas P. Stafford said the infamous phrase, "Oh, who did it?" He obviously meant that a bit of human feces that was in some way floating through the air inside the module as the "it" he was referring to. When a second piece of feces was discovered after the first doo-doo was picked up using a serviette, pilot Eugene Cernan famously said, "Here's another goddamn turd." The nicest thing about the entire situation is that no one took responsibility. The enigma behind the floating floater has not been solved. Since both Cernan and colleague pilot John Young passed away, if it was one of them, they practically carried that information to their graves. Number 2, they created TLC. TLC is a cable TV network best known for shows like My 600 Pound Life and Dr. Pimple Popper, not to be confused with the WWE event or the 90s girl group. However, it can be traced back to the workers at the space agency, just like baby food and smartphone cameras can. The Appalachian Educational Satellite Project was the name of the station when it was first established in 1972. The US Department of Health, Education and Welfare and our partners at NASA initiated this research. Its purpose was to offer employment, health, and general life guidance to young people in the areas served by public universities and institutions in the Appalachian Mountains. Over time, the station flourished and extended its service area outside the hilly region. Its name was modified to ASCN, the Learning Channel, in 1980, and by 1984 it went by the abbreviation TLC, or the Learning Channel. Number 1, Operation Paperclip. We're switching gears quickly and moving from pointless reality TV to Germany. Over the years 1939 to 1945, the third group amassed a sizable pool of scientists, engineers, and technicians. The US hoped to capitalize on some of this expertise when the conflict was over. This led to the creation of Operation Paperclip, a scheme to relocate and employ hundreds, if not thousands, of former German scientists into the US. You guessed it, the early days of NASA were one of these projects. Kurt Davis, a former V2 rocket scientist, was one of the individuals brought over as part of Operation Paperclip. Davis joined NASA in 1960 after receiving a transfer, and in just 2 years he was appointed the organization's first director of the Launch Operations Center. From then, he was in charge of numerous rocket launches and was essential to the moon landings planning. Unfortunately, NASA was a part of Operation Paperclip, which tarnishes American post-conflict efforts. Even after all these years, hearing the painful secret doesn't become any easier. Number 10, the Battle of Los Angeles. The Battle of Los Angeles, also known as the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, is the name given by contemporary sources to a rumored attack on the continental United States by Imperial Japan and the subsequent anti-aircraft artillery barrage, which took place from late 24th of February to early 25th February 1942 over Los Angeles, California. The incident occurred less than 3 months after the US entered WW2 in response to an Imperial Japanese Navy's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, and 1 day after the bombardment of Elwood near Santa Barbara on 23rd of February. Initially, the target of the aerial barrage was thought to be an attacking force from Japan, but speaking at a press conference shortly afterwards, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox called the purported attack a false alarm. Newspapers of the time published a number of reports and speculations of a cover-up to conceal an actual invasion by enemy airplanes. Number 9, the Maury Island incident. On July 29th, Arnold interviewed Harold Dahl, who reported on June 21st, 1947, in the afternoon about 2 o'clock, I was patrolling the east bay of Maury Island. I, as captain, was steering my patrol boat close to the shore of a bay on Maury Island. On board were 2 crewmen, my 15-year-old son and his dog. As I looked up from the wheel on my boat, I noticed 6 very large donut-shaped aircraft. Dahl further claimed that one of the objects began spewing forth what seemed like thousands of newspapers from somewhere on the inside of its center. These newspapers, which turned out to be a white type of very lightweight metal, fluttered to Earth. Dahl reported that a substance resembling lava rocks fell onto their boat, breaking a worker's arm and ending a dog's life. Dahl also claimed he was later approached by a man in a dark suit and told not to talk about the incident. Crispin, when interviewed, reported having recovered debris from Maury Island and having witnessed an unusual craft. Number 8. Covered up. The Roswell incident centers on the 1947 recovery of metallic and rubber debris from a military balloon that crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. Decades later, conspiracy theories claimed that the debris was from a flying saucer, which had been covered up by the United States government. In 1994, the United States Air Force published a report identifying the crashed object as a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul. On July 8, 1947, Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating that they had recovered a flying disc. The Army quickly retracted the statement and said instead that the crashed object was a conventional weather balloon. The Roswell incident was not widely discussed until the late 1970s, when retired Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel, in an interview with UFOologist Stanton Friedman, said he believed the debris he retrieved was extraterrestrial. Number 7. The Mantell UFO Incident. On January 7, 1948, 25-year-old Captain Thomas F. Mantell, a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot, passed away in the crash of his P-51 Mustang fighter plane near Franklin, Kentucky, United States, after being sent in pursuit of an unidentified flying object. The event was among the most publicized early UFO incidents. Later investigation by the United States Air Force's Project Blue Book indicated that Mantell had passed away chasing a skyhook balloon, which in 1948 was a top secret project that he would not have known about. Mantell pursued the object in a steep climb and disregarded suggestions to level his altitude. At high altitude, he blacked out from a lack of oxygen, his plane went downward into a spiral and crashed. Number 6. The Gorman dogfight. George F. Gorman told the tower that he was going to pursue the object that had appeared to determine its identity. He moved his Mustang to full power, 350 to 400 miles per hour, but soon realized that the object was going too fast for him to catch in a straight run. Instead, he tried cutting the object off by turns. Gorman made a right turn and approached the object head-on at 5,000 feet. The object flew over his plane at a distance of about 500 feet. Gorman described the object as a simple ball of light, about 6 to 8 inches in diameter. He also noted later that when the object increased its speed, it stopped blinking and grew brighter. After his near collision, Gorman lost sight of the object. In the control tower, the air traffic controller, L.D. Jensen, viewed the object through binoculars but could see no form or shape around the light. He was joined by Cannon and his passenger from the Paperclip. They had landed and walked to the control tower to get a better view of the object. Number 5. The McMinnville UFO photographs. The McMinnville UFO photographs, also known as the Trent UFO photos, were taken by a farming couple, Paul and Evelyn Trent, near McMinnville, Oregon, United States on May 11, 1950. The photos were reprinted in Life magazine and in newspapers across the nation, and are often considered to be among the most famous photographs ever taken of a UFO. UFO skeptics consider these photographs a hoax, although many ufologists continue to argue that the photos actually depict a genuine three-dimensional unidentified flying object in the sky. Number 4. The Lubbock Lights. Edward J. Ruppelt wrote that the first sighting was reported by 3 professors from Texas Technological College, now Texas Tech University, located in Lubbock on August 25, 1951 at around 9 p.m. According to Ruppelt, they were sitting in the backyard of one of the professors' homes when they observed a total of 20 to 30 lights, as bright as stars but larger in size, flying overhead. Ruppelt wrote that the professors immediately ruled out meteors as a possible cause for the sighting, and as they discussed their sighting, a second similar group of lights flew overhead. According to UFO author Jerome Clark, 3 women in Lubbock reported that they had observed peculiar flashing lights in the sky on the same nights at the professor's sighting. Number 3. The disappearance of Felix Moncla. On the evening of November 23, 1953, Air Defense Command Ground Intercept Radar operators at SALT STE, Mary, Michigan, identified an unusual target over Lake Superior near the Sioux Locks. An F-89C Scorpion jet from Kinross Air Force Base was scrambled to investigate the radar return. The Scorpion was piloted by 1st Lieutenant Moncla with 2nd Lieutenant Robert L. Wilson acting as the Scorpion's radar operator. Wilson had a difficult time tracking the object on the Scorpion's radar, so ground radar operators gave Moncla directions towards the object as he flew. Moncla eventually closed in on the object at about 8,000 feet in altitude. Ground control tracked the Scorpion and the unidentified object as 2 blips on the radar screen. The 2 blips on the radar screen grew closer and closer until they seemed to merge. Assuming that Moncla had flown either either under or over the target, ground control anticipated that moments later, the Scorpion and the object would again appear as two separate blips. Donald Kehoe reported that there was a fear that the two objects had struck one another, but the single blip continued on its previous course. Attempts were made to contact Moncla via radio, but without success. A search and rescue operation by both the USAF and the Royal Canadian Air Force was quickly mounted, but failed to find any trace of the plane or its pilots. Number 2, the Exeter incident. On September 3rd, 1965, at approximately 2 a.m., 18-year-old Norman Muscarello was hitchhiking to his home in Exeter along New Hampshire Road 150. Since he did not own a car, Muscarello would hitchhike to and from Amesbury, a distance of about 10 miles or 16 kilometers. After reaching Kensington a few miles outside of Exeter, Muscarello noticed 5 flashing bright lights in the distance, which he initially thought might be the lights of a police car or fire engine. As he drew nearer to the lights, he saw that they were hovering in the air just above the trees and illuminated a nearby field and 2 houses in brilliant red light. One house belonged to the dining family, who were not at home at the time, the other to a family named Russell. He became terrified as the subject, which made absolutely no sound, began to move steadily towards him. Panicking, he dived into a ditch beside the road. The lights changed directions and hovered over the dining farmhouse. Muscarello ran to the Russell's house, pounded on the door and yelled for help, but no one answered. Number 1, the Phoenix Lights. A widely reported appearance of black triangles involved the Phoenix Lights event, during which multiple unidentified objects were observed near Phoenix, Arizona, and videotaped by both the local media and residents beginning on Thursday, March 13th, 1997. Some of the observed objects or lights appeared to be grouped in a large V formation that lingered for several minutes. Some residents reported one of the black triangles to be over a mile wide and that it drifted slowly over their houses, blocking out the stars of the night sky. An official report from the US Air Force concluded that the military had been locally testing aircraft-launched flares during that time period, but who knows?
Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have the aerial school UFO incident. On September 16, 1994, there was a sighting of a UFO outside Rua, Zimbabwe. 69 students at the aerial school, aged between 6 and 12, saw one or more silver crafts descend from the sky and land on a field near their school. Here are some of the pictures that the kids drew after researchers requested when it was still, quote, fresh on their mind. So apparently creatures dressed in black then approached the children and telepathically communicated an environmental message. After the children told their teachers what they had seen, they were dismissed, but when they told their parents, many of them came to school the next day to discuss what had happened with the faculty. The sighting was reported on ZBC radio, from where Cynthia Hinn learned about it. The BBC correspondent in Zimbabwe then visited the school on 19th of September to film interviews with pupils and the staff. And then after investigating the incident, the correspondent claimed, quote, "I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this." Harvard University professor John Mack visited the aerial school in November as well to interview some of the witnesses. Mack had a particular interest in the alien abduction phenomenon. He then interviewed children 2 months after the alleged sighting and found out that between 1 and 4 creatures with big eyes and dressed in all black approached the children altogether. At a number 9 spot, we have the Barney and Betty Hill case. Barney and Betty Hill were an American couple who claimed that they were abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural area of New Hampshire in September 1961. The couple was driving back to Portsmouth from their vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal when Betty claimed that she observed a very, very bright light in the sky. At first, she believed it to be a falling star, but when the light grew bigger and brighter, they stopped their car to take a closer look. Through binoculars, Betty observed an odd-shaped craft with multicolored lights, while Barney saw what he thought was a commercial airliner. But when the craft rapidly descended towards them, Barney realized it was not a plane at all. The couple watched as the silent, illuminated craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky. Later, the object descended rapidly towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. Barney, carrying his pistol in his pocket, stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object. Then, using his binoculars again, he claimed to have seen humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. They seemed to be looking at him and in unison, all but one moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure communicated a message to Barney, telling him to, quote, "Stay where you are and keep looking." The silent craft approached what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. At a number 8 spot, we have the Rendlesham Forest incident. Known as Britain's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest incident is one of the most famous UFO reports of all time. The reason? Well, because the witnesses involved in the December 1980 event were in fact US military personnel and considered highly credible witnesses. So the US Air Force Base in Woodbridge, England experienced a UFO encounter that later made international headlines. The incident involved a group of American airmen who claimed they saw an alien spaceship in Rendlesham Forest, which surrounds the Air Force Base. According to the airmen, the craft came down from over the trees and landed in a blinding explosion of light. They tried to approach it, but it moved away from them as though under intelligent control. The following day, landing marks were found on the ground, burns were seen on the nearby trees, and radiation traces were recorded. The News of the World, a UK tabloid, broke the story in October 1983, and it was soon revealed that the informant was a former US airman named Larry Warren. At a number 7 spot, we have the flying saucer in Australia. The events that transpired on April 6, 1966 at Westall High School in Melbourne, Australia left over 300 students and teachers in awe as they witnessed an identified flying object in the sky. This otherworldly sighting was not a mere hallucination, but rather a shared experience that had students and staff alike seeing a quote round hump object with a flat base being circled by what appeared to be a light aircraft. The UFO was described as being gray or silver gray in color, but the exact height and duration of its appearance remains a mystery to this day. Adding to the confusion, there were more conflicting reports as to whether there was one UFO or multiple objects hovering above the school. While some people claimed to have seen 3 saucer-like objects, others insisted that there was just one. The situation was made even more perplexing by a newspaper report from the 1960s, which stated that some children had collapsed and became ill with fright at the sight of the UFO. One witness to the event, Mr. Andrew Greenwood, who was a science teacher at the time, claimed that he saw a mechanical object intelligently controlled hovering above me. The sighting lasted for approximately 20 minutes, during which time witnesses reported that 5 planes surrounded the UFO, appearing to attempt to hurt it up before the object eventually flew away. At a number 6 spot, we have the Gulf Breeze 6. The Gulf Breeze UFO incident was a series of UFO sightings in Gulf Breeze, Florida in 1987 and 1988. The story began when local contractor Ed Walters claimed to have been briefly immobilized by a blue beam on November 11, 1987, and he captured 5 Polaroids of this object. He then claimed to have taken 32 more photographs and even videotaped the UFO over multiple visits. Walter further claimed to have seen the UFO land on Sunside Drive and deposit 5 aliens on the road. He even reported the aliens communicated with him in both English and Spanish, as well as showing him a book with pictures of dogs, and even lifted him 3 feet off the ground with a blue beam of light. The Gulf Breeze Sentinel published photographs supplied by Walters claiming to show the UFO, but many believe that the images to be hoax. In 1990, after Walters and his family moved out of their house, the new owners discovered a styrofoam model UFO hidden in the attic. In the hub of our list, we have the Maury Island incident. The Maury Island incident is a mysterious event that occurred on June 21st, 1947 in Puget Sound, Washington. 2 men, Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl, claimed to have seen unidentified flying objects in the sky that night, followed by falling debris and threats from men in black. This incident happened during the height of the 1947 flying disc craze, which began when private pilot Kenneth Arnold claimed to have seen 9 shiny unidentified flying objects flying near Mount Rainier. The incident gained nationwide news coverage and led to the popular descriptive terms flying saucer and flying disc for UFOs. Then after Arnold's report, he was contacted by Raymond A. Palmer, who was an editor of the fringe sci-fi magazine Amazing Stories. Palmer relayed the story of 2 Harborman patrolmen in Tacoma who reportedly possessed fragments of a flying saucer. And on June 28th, Palmer wired $200 to Arnold to fund the investigation. Arnold then interviewed Harold Dahl, the person I mentioned before, who claimed to have seen 6 large donut-shaped aircraft and that one of them spewed thousands of newspapers made of lightweight metal. Dahl also claimed that a substance resembling lava rocks fell onto their boat, killing a dog and breaking a worker's arm. Dahl reported that he was later approached by a man in a dark suit who told him not to talk about the incident at all or else face severe consequences. Number 4, the USS Nimitz encounter. In November 2004, something strange and unexplainable was witnessed by crew members aboard the USS Princeton, a part of the USS Nimitz carrier strike group off the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks, the crew had been tracking unidentified objects on the radar that would suddenly appear at 80,000 feet and then quickly descend to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. 2 FA-18F fighter jets from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz were sent to investigate the strange phenomenon. When they arrived, they saw something very bizarre. What appeared to be churning water with a shadow of an oval shape underneath the surface. Suddenly, a white tic-tac shaped object emerged from the water, hovering in the air around 50 feet above it. The object had no visible markings to indicate an engine, wings, or even windows. Black Ace Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slott of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 attempted to intercept this craft by going down towards it, and when they were just a few meters away, it accelerated at an incredible speed, appearing on radar 60 miles away within seconds. Number 3, the Stephenville sightings. Stephenville, Texas, a quaint town 100 miles southwest of Dallas, is known for its dairy farms and tranquil surroundings. However, on the evening of January 8, 2008, the skies above this sleepy town were the stage of a truly remarkable event. Dozens of residents reported seeing an unusual phenomenon as white lights appeared above Highway 67, first in a single horizontal arc, then in vertical parallel lines. The sheer size of these strobe lights were mind-boggling, spanning a massive 1.5 miles wide, traveling at a speed of 3,000 miles per hour. One witness, local pilot Steve Allen, could hardly believe his eyes, stating that the lights were unlike anything he had ever seen before. Despite the immense size and speed of the object, there was no sound to be heard. The event immediately caused a buzz among the townspeople, with many people drawing comparisons to the infamous Phoenix light sightings of 1997. Number 2, the lights above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14, 2001, something extraordinary happened that left motorists on New Jersey Turnpike mesmerized. For 15 minutes just after midnight, drivers stopped their vehicles along the highway to witness strange lights in the sky. The lights, which were in a V-shaped formation, appeared to be orange and yellow and were hovering over the Arthur Kill waterway between Staten Island, New York, and New Jersey. The bizarre sighting was not limited to just the New Jersey Turnpike. Other people from the Throgs Neck Bridge on Long Island and Fort Lee, New Jersey, near the George Washington Bridge, also reported seeing the same lights. Despite the air traffic controllers denying any association of the sighting with airplanes, military jets, or even space flights, the New York SPI claimed that the Federal Aviation Administration radar data validated the UFO sightings from that night. This suggested that the lights witnessed by the public were not just an optical illusion, but something out of the ordinary. Coming in at a number 1 spot, we have the O'Hare International Airport saucer. On a seemingly ordinary day on November 7, 2006, United Airlines Flight 446 was preparing to take off from Chicago's bustling O'Hare International Airport. However, what happened next was far from ordinary. As the United Airlines employee on the tarmac was performing their duties, they noticed a mysterious dark gray metallic craft hovering over gate C-17. The sighting was not isolated, as a total of 12 United employees and a few witnesses outside the airport also spotted the saucer-shaped craft around 4:15 p.m. that day. According to the witnesses, the craft hovered in the sky for approximately 5 minutes before suddenly shooting upwards. Its ascension was so forceful that it broke a hole in the clouds, revealing the blue sky. The incident was so compelling that the news report became the most read story on the Chicago's Tribune website to that date and made international headlines as well. Many conspiracy theorists believe the FAA's lack of investigation indicates a government cover-up to conceal the existence of extraterrestrial life. Others suggest that the sighting was simply a high-tech drone or even an experimental aircraft developed by the US government.
Number 10, fiery discs in 1440 BC, Egypt. The Tully Papyrus is claimed to be a transcription of an Egyptian papyrus dating from the reign of Thutmose III. The claim originated in a 1953 article published in Doubt the Fortean Society magazine by Tiffany Thayer. According to Thayer, the transcription was sent to him by Boris de Roche-Wiltz, who supposedly found the original transcription of the papyrus among papers left by Alberto Tully. References to circles of fire or fiery discs allegedly contained in the translation have been interpreted in UFO and Fortean literature as evidence of ancient flying saucers. According to Vallée and Aubic, since Tully had supposedly copied it during a single viewing of the original papyrus using an ancient Egyptian shorthand, and de Roche-Wiltz has never seen the original, the alleged text likely contained transcription errors, making it impossible to verify. Number 9, spheres and other shapes in 1561 Nuremberg. A broadsheet news article printed in April 1561 described a mass sighting of celestial phenomena. The broadsheet, illustrated with a woodcut engraving and text by Hans Glosser, measured 26.2 centimeters or 10.3 inches by 38 centimeters or 15 inches. The document is archived in the Prints and Drawings collection at the Zentralbibliothek Zurich in Zurich, Switzerland, which means Central Library. According to the broadsheet, around dawn on 14th of April 1561, many men and women of Nuremberg saw what the broadsheet describes as an aerial battle out of the sun, followed by the appearance of a large black triangular object and exhausted combatant spheres falling to earth in clouds of smoke. The woodcut illustration depicts objects of various shapes, including crosses with or without spheres on the arms, small spheres, two large crescents, a black spear, and cylindrical objects from which several small spheres emerged and darted around the sky at dawn. Number 8. More spheres in the sky in 1566 Switzerland. A series of mass sightings of celestial phenomena occurred in 1566 above Basel, Switzerland. The Basel pamphlet of 1566 describes unusual sunrises and sunsets. Celestial phenomena were said to have fought together in the form of numerous red and black balls in the sky before the rising sun. The report is discussed among historians and meteorologists. The phenomenon has been interpreted by some ufologists to be a sky battle between unidentified flying objects. The leaflet, written by historian Samuel Coccius, reported it as a religious event. The Basel pamphlet of 1566 is not the only one of its kind. In the 15th and 16th century, many leaflets wrote of miracles and sky spectacles. Number 7. Alien boat in 1803 Japan. Utsurobune, meaning hollow ship, also Utsurofune, and Urobune, was an unknown object that allegedly washed ashore in 1803 in Hitachi province on the eastern coast of Japan. When defining Utsurobune, the bune part means boat, while Utsuro means empty or hollow. Accounts of the tale appear in 4 texts: Oshuku Zaki, Toen Shosetsu, Kyoryu Kishu, and Ume no Chiri. According to legend, a young woman aged 18 to 20 years old arrived on a local beach aboard the hollow ship on February 22, 1803. Fishermen brought her inland to investigate further, but the woman was unable to communicate in Japanese. She was very different from anyone else there. The fishermen then returned her and her vessel to the sea, where it drifted away. Historians, ethnologists, and physicists such as Kazuo Tanaka and Yanagita Kunio have evaluated the legend of the hollow boat as part of a long-standing tradition within Japanese folklore. Number 6. 400 unidentified objects in 1883 Mexico. Jose Bonilla was a Mexican astronomer. Knowing he's a scientist, there are going to be lots of measurements and numbers, so bear with me. On August 12, 1883, Bonilla was preparing his telescope for a study when he noticed that objects seemed to be partially blocking the sun. Using a process known as collodion process to capture 447 ink photographs of the objects. Along with his photographs, Bonilla also left descriptions of what he noticed to clarify what the low-quality ink images were showing, as well as a significant amount of data. Bonilla describes the objects as fuzzy or misty in nature, and often referred to UFOs that had dark tails. He also reported that they were as low as 538 kilometers or 334 miles above ground, as high as 8,062 kilometers, 5,009 miles above ground, between 68 meters or 223 feet and 795 meters or 2,608 feet in length, and between 5.58 times 108 kilograms or 1.23 times 107 pounds and 2.5 times 1012 kilograms or 5.51 times 1010 pounds in mass. That's very exact from those blurry images I'm sure you're looking at right now. Number 5. The Miracle of the Sun in 1917 Portugal. This one's crazy, so stay tuned. The Miracle of the Sun, also known as the Miracle of Fatima, is a series of events reported to have occurred miraculously on the 13th of October 1917, attended by a large crowd who had gathered in Fatima, Portugal, in response to a prophecy made by 3 shepherd children, Lucia Santos and Francisco and Jacinta Marto. The prophecy was that the Virgin Mary, referred to as Our Lady of Fatima, would appear and perform miracles on that date. Newspapers published testimony from witnesses who said that they had seen extraordinary solar activity, such as the sun appearing to dance or zigzag in the sky, careen towards Earth, or emit multicolored light and radiant colors. Number 4. UFO landing in 1946 Sweden. The Angelholm UFO Memorial is a Swedish monument dedicated to an alleged UFO landing site in the Rendlesham Forest near Angelholm. It includes a concrete scale model of a flying saucer, the purportedly life-size landing impressions on the ground, and copper plaques mounted on pillars. These reflect the account of Swedish entrepreneur Gösta Karlsson, who attributed his success to a 1946 UFO encounter. The memorial, erected in 1972, is maintained by the local government. It has become a tourist destination and is the Swedish National Heritage Board heritage site, RAA Srovelsstop 47-1. Number 3. Flight 105 sighting in 1947 Pacific Northwest. The Flight 105 UFO sighting occurred on July 4th, 1947, when 3 crew members aboard a United Airlines flight reported seeing multiple unidentified objects in the skies over the Pacific Northwest. A week prior, private pilot Kenneth Arnold had reported seeing similar objects nearby, a sighting that was followed by nearly 800 copycat reports during the summer of 1947. 4 days after the Flight 105 sighting, Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating that they had recovered a flying disc. That statement was quickly retracted after the crashed object was identified as a conventional weather balloon. Or that's what they want you to think. Number 2. The Battle of Los Angeles. The Battle of Los Angeles, also known as the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, is the name given by contemporary sources to a rumored attack on the continental United States by Imperial Japan and the subsequent anti-aircraft artillery barrage that took place from late 24th of February to early 25th of February 1942 over Los Angeles, California. The incident occurred less than 3 months after the US entered WW2 in response to the Imperial Japanese Navy's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, and 1 day after the bombardment of Elwood near Santa Barbara on the 23rd of February. Initially, the target of the aerial barrage was thought to be an attacking force from Japan, but speaking at a press conference shortly afterward, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox called the purported attack a false alarm. Newspapers of the time published a number of reports and speculations of a cover-up to conceal an actual invasion by enemy airplanes. Number 1. The Gorman dogfight. George F. Gorman told the tower that he was going to pursue the object that had appeared to determine its identity. He moved his Mustang to full power, 350 to 400 miles per hour, but soon realized that the object was going too fast for him to catch it in a straight run. Instead, he tried cutting the object off by turns. Gorman made a right turn and approached the object head-on at 5,000 feet. The object flew over his plane at a distance at about 500 feet. Gorman described the object as a simple ball of light, about 6 to 8 inches in diameter. He also noted later that when the object increased its speed, it stopped blinking and grew brighter. After his near collision, Gorman lost sight of the object. When he saw it again, it appeared to have made a 180-degree turn and was coming at him again. The object then made a sudden vertical climb. Gorman followed the object in his own steep climb. At 14,000 feet, his P-51 stalled. The object was still 2,000 feet above him. Gorman made 2 further attempts to get closer to the object, with no success. It seemed to make another head-on pass, but broke off before coming close to his fighter. By this point, the object had moved over Hector Airport. In the control tower, the air traffic controller, L.D. Jensen, viewed the object through binoculars but could see no form or shape around the light.